I'm Jackie Lucky, your financial planning maestro. This series of podcasts is aimed at financial planning professionals and also those who are looking to enter the financial planning profession. We will be talking during the podcast about all things Certified Financial Planner certification related, talking to other CFPs around the world, and also we will be dropping in on some new entrants who've just entered the financial planning profession, and we'll be checking up along the way on a regular basis with them to see how they're getting on. I hope you enjoy today's podcast. Hello and welcome. I'm Jackie Lucky, your financial planning maestro. And in today's session, we are going to talk about the global financial planning profession with my special guest, who is the new Chief Executive of the Financial Planning Standards Board, which is the global standards setting body based out of Denver in the US. And that is Dante De Gori. Hello, Dante.
Hey, Jackie. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, but here in Sydney and nice and hot, the weather at the moment here.
Nice, so I'm doing hot. Oh, wow. Not hot here. But anyway, I wish. Well, that'll come. We'll get it there, get it here in due course. So thanks very much for joining me today. I've got lots of questions because congratulations on being appointed as the CEO of the Financial Planning Standards Board. I'm sure it's a really, really exciting time for you to get involved in, more so in the global profession of financial planning, isn't it?
Yes, no, thank you. It's I'm almost 2 months in to the job, so very exciting, and it's a bit of a whirlwind, but great opportunity and looking forward to it.
Excellent. So for people who haven't met you and don't know you, let's just give them a quick run through of how you became the chief exec of this, global standard setting body for financial planning.
Sure. Well, look, so name Dante De Gori. I'm from Australia, Sydney, Australia. I started my career in an insurance company called Zurich, which some of your listeners may have heard of. I studied commerce, finance at university, and I really thought I was going to be a stockbroker at the time when I was at uni, but that didn't pan out, thankfully. I got into the world of financial services and learnt about investments and insurance and retirement planning, and I learned about this thing called financial advice and financial planning. And I didn't learn that at uni during my day, which I know many of your listeners would be in a similar boat. But once I was in the industry, it really piqued my interest, and I fell in love, I think, with the role that financial planners play in supporting and assisting the lives of everyday people and helping them achieve their dreams and goals. And so I commenced my studies and training here in Australia and undertook eventually my certification as well and became a CFP professional here in Australia. And I really got interested and in not only the practice of financial planning, but the rules and regulations that support financial planning. Why do the rules exist? The tax rules, the if you like the playbook that surrounds the advice tactics or the recommendations given by financial planners for people in terms of navigating their wealth accumulation and wealth protection strategies, and so I got into the world of policy and politics as well, and eventually joined the Financial Planning Association as their sort of general manager of policy and politics and policy and government relations, and then eventually went on to become the CEO of FPA Australia. So I was there for 12 years and been heavily involved in a lot of reform that's taken place in Australia, which no doubt we'll probably touch on later on in the conversation. And then eventually got involved in the world of the Financial Planning Standards Board.
Yeah. And for those people who don't know the FPA in Australia, each of the 27 countries in the CFP affiliate banner, one of them is in Australia, and that's the FPA, isn't it? So they're the awarding body and the certification standard setting body for the Australia arm, if you like, of the affiliate.
Yeah, that's right. So the Financial Planning Standards Board licenses the use and distribution of the certification marks, the CFP marks, around the world, and Australia is one of those territories. And FPA, Financial Planning Association of Australia, was the body that's licensed in Australia to do that, and that's the body that I worked for and ran before coming across to the global body.
Excellent. Thank you. And talking of the global body, let's talk about the number of certified financial planners globally now, because at the end of December each year, each of the affiliate territories calculate the number of certified financial planners that they have on their membership and then submit those to the FPSB, don't they? And then in January, February time, the FPSB will release the global figures. And the numbers are up again, aren't they? We've gone from 208,000 to 213,000 as at the end of December 2022. And that's fantastic, isn't it?
Oh, it's amazing, Jackie, amazing. And look, I did a little bit of digging and even though the Financial Planning Standards Board as an organisation, as an entity, is about 20 years old, the certification marks have been around much longer. I mean, for many of your listeners, they may know that the CFP marks were born out of the US. So the data that I've been informed is that this is 26 years of consecutive growth of CFP professional numbers around the world. And as you say, this year, or for the end of the 2022 results, we've now surpassed 213,000 CFP professionals around the world. It's just under a 5% increase, global increase, and that's just under about 10,000 CFP professionals that we've added to that number for the year. So it's fantastic. Many of the territories are doing well. In fact, I think we had 6 countries with double-digit growth. So I mean, if you think about that double-digit growth, that's great. Obviously, not all territories are growing that fast or growing, and there are some territories that we need to work with, and there are obviously other underlying factors in respect to that. But the majority of territories are growing, and obviously one of the areas that we are looking at as well is also growing the number of territories for CFP certification around the world as well. But it's a good news story all around.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think here in the UK, we've got good news too. I think we've added about 100 net new certified financial planners in 2022, which I think is a step forward. We're still not back to where we were prior to the merger of the Institute of Financial Planning and the CISI, but at least the numbers are moving back in the right direction, I think, now. Are you pleased with what's starting to happen in the UK now?
Yeah, look, I think the UK definitely had a very good 12 months. I think their growth rate was around just over 6% on the previous year. I think there's a lot of indicators that show the UK is moving in the right direction. Obviously, as a market, in comparison to the maturity and size of the financial services market in the UK, the number of CFP professionals represented there is small, and I think there's great opportunity for CISI and the UK market to grow, and we're quite happy with the fact that I think there's some great strides and also some upcoming opportunities for CISI to take advantage of that. So we'll continue to show a keen interest in the UK market. It's an important market if you think about world financial services and just generally speaking, in terms of a leader in financial services regulation, the UK is a very important market. And so therefore having a larger number of CFP professionals representing that market is of importance to us. And I think, I'm hopeful that things are turning around there and we continue to progress.
Yeah. And it's really important. I completely agree. And I think also from a regulatory point of view, it's very important because, as you say, so many other countries, South Africa was the first one that springs to mind. When the UK rolled out retail distribution review, South Africa had their own version of the retail distribution review. But, as a a regulator on the playing field of all regulators, then the UK is very influential, isn't it?
It sure is, and it's important. It has very much is seen as a leader in terms of regulation. The UK market, obviously being a very sophisticated and mature market, there's a lot of lessons that can be learned. Many territories and markets can learn from those lessons. So it is an influential market, and hence why I think the opportunity for the CFP marks and the growth of CFP Professionals is high. And look, one of the things I know that's also important in the UK market that's very unique to other markets around the world is the chartered status. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that the CISI was able to get across the line very recently was the chartered status of the CFP mark. So I know that's going to assist. And of course, I think their targeting of the next generation as well is quite important. So, there's a balance, Jackie, I think you would agree, a balance between, supporting and assisting the current generation of CFP professionals and ensuring they're adequately supported and assisted and the services are provided to them to continue to do the best work they can do. But at the same time, you also need to attract and foster the next generation of CFP professionals. And that combination is the key to growth and success going forward.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, completely agree. And one of the things that kind of is one of my pet hates about what happens in the UK, you can tell me whether it goes on elsewhere in the world, is that we have a lot of both trainee financial planners and people calling themselves financial planners who aren't actually doing financial planning. There, as you say, there are about 28,000 regulated advisors-ish in the UK, and, nearly 1,000 of them are certified financial planners. But of the remaining 27,000-ish, the majority of them are calling themselves financial planners, when really they might be using cash flow software, for example, but it's essentially kind of glorified, using cash flow software to sell, a range of products rather than actually doing holistic financial planning. Is that something that's just in the UK, or have you seen that in other countries? Has it happened in Australia? Is that going on there, or, what's your views on that?
Yes, look, it's a common theme across many markets from what I can see. And look, it's actually a function of the history and the evolution of where the financial advice, financial planning sort of profession has come from. So different markets have different beginnings, but effectively a sales culture is where the majority of markets start. So it's a sales, and this is where the regulation in many territories and regulators, their first point of regulation is about the regulation and licensing of product sales. And if you look across the world, in fact, every jurisdiction, all the regulation and licensing is about the sale and advice on products. And in some cases, you need separate licenses from insurance products to investment products, securities, etc. So that's where it starts. I think where a lot of mature markets have gone to, like the UK and Australia and others, is that there's a recognition that those individuals that were born from a sales environment, that we're now moving into an environment where, and have moved in many cases into an environment where actually the product that's being sold is advice. It's no longer the investment product or the insurance product or something else that's being sold. It's actually my services, my advice to you is what I offer. This is what I provide. This is my expertise. The recommendation of a financial product may occur or would occur at some point through the process, but that's not what I do. I'm not here to sell you a product. I'm here to provide you, holistic advice that may or may not include a product recommendation. And so there has definitely been that realization across some territories that is what financial planning is about. But arguably in most territories still there is that pocket of, and also the structure is that you come through and you're licensed to sell products. And many institutions, to be quite fair and frank, is that that's what they want you to do. They will employ people to come in and sell their products. And if they can do that under the guise of advice, then that's a win for them. But I think there is this, conflict, and there is this, headbutting, if you like, between the profession, which is saying, look, we're here about the practice of financial planning, which is holistic advice, taking in the personal needs and circumstances of an individual and providing them with a financial plan, versus, I need you to sell this product to this client. These clients, and we need to sell these products. You need to distribute our products, and in many jurisdictions, that is coming to a head. But I think there are challenges to that, Jackie. So there's in an ideal scenario, you want people to practice the true concept of financial planning, but you also have to realize the practical realities of people who they work for, also client needs or client wants, and what do customers actually want from their service provider or their financial planner, and bringing that together, I think, is easier said than done.
Yeah, and I think also some clients can't afford to have a full financial plan created. They can't afford to go through the whole holistic process, depending on how the fees are charged, isn't it? So it can be. We've talked about globally over the years about mass market financial planning advice, and whether Robo could fill that gap, or as I think Noel, your predecessor, used to say, Robo assisted rather than Robo advice, to be able to fill that gap of the mass market, because that kind of, certainly in the UK and in many mature markets, you've got a significant number of people towards the kind of top end, the kind of more affluent of the mass market, if you like, that really should have a financial plan, don't you? But actually, most of them probably can't afford to have it. They might be able to pay for a financial planner, as a one-off, but maybe not engage, that holistic financial planning approach and the advice on a regular basis.
Yeah, and that is the challenge of our times at the moment, and because some territories and regulators have, especially since the global financial crisis and other scandals that may have occurred, and to protect consumers, there has been an increase in protection of consumers on one hand, and also an increase in the trying to professionalize the sales industry into a proper advice profession. And in doing so, and we've seen this in the UK, we've seen this here in Australia, we're going to, seeing this in other areas around the world, where the cost to practice has skyrocketed. And therefore, going to your point, the access to everyday citizens to access that quality, that high level of advice, is becoming out of reach. And so there is, in Australia, for example, this has come to a head where in the last 12 months, the government of the day, or the previous government, actually realised, effectively admitted, that they have overregulated the sector. And there was an inquiry into reviewing those regulations and seeing what could be wound back, what could be streamlined and stripped out, so that you have that balance of protection of consumers, but you're creating an environment where people, where businesses and professionals want to practice in, because it's, if you don't have a scenario in which you can run a business, then no one's going to get advice. So, you can almost compliance out a whole advice profession through over-regulation. So there are some lessons there that need to be heeded by many of the territories that are looking at those models, just to get that balance right. But also, my word of caution is that you can't regulate a profession. You can't legislate a profession into being. My view is that legislation is there as a minimum level, and for licensing and for product advice, I think that's appropriate.
And that's really interesting, Dante. And, tell us a little bit about what's been happening in Australia, because if memory serves me right, a few years ago, the regulator regulated the term financial planner, didn't they? Is that the first time in any of the territories that hold the CFP license that's happened?
Yeah, so it was a number of years ago now, and I can't remember exactly when, but it's definitely more than maybe 6-7 years ago that we had the terms financial planner and financial advisor enshrined in law. So effectively, what the legislation did was make it a term that was protected. And that only those that met the licensing requirements to practice and practice in the space of providing financial advice, that they could utilize those terms. Because in Australia, and I'm not sure if this is common in other jurisdictions, but in Australia we had other professionals or other individuals, perhaps in real estate and mortgage broking, accounting, etc. I'm not picking on anyone in particular, but there were individuals that would spruik themselves as financial advisors and financial planners, but they obviously weren't. They weren't licensed to do so. There was nothing that legally that anyone could do about the fact that there was nothing stopping them from using the term. So we advocated quite hard that we felt that in terms of protecting consumers, that those terms should be protected terms. They should be legally protected terms and only used by those that were licensed. And in terms of whether we're the only jurisdiction, I think we were the first country, I think, where this came in across the board in terms of national. My understanding in the research that we did when we were advocating this, there was some form of protection or title protection in Ontario in Canada, or Quebec or something like that. There was something in one of those countries, but again, that was just a province as opposed to a whole country. So I think we were the first that put that into place.
Yeah. And there've been a few issues, haven't there? Sometimes I always think, you've got to be careful what you wish for, because it's one of the aspects here in the UK that a number of people keep, shouting about and saying, well, maybe we should regulate the term financial planner. But then, the potential knock-on effects of doing that are that you are deliberately, obviously, excluding some people who shouldn't be, espousing to be financial planners. But also it does open the door for perhaps extra exams or, in Australia's case, going back to university and things like that, where there are long-standing, perhaps certified financial planners in that particular territory that are then going to have to go back and redo some extra learning.
Yeah, it's one of those ones. I mean, it wasn't a direct result. So there was going ahead a few years, the reforms to the training and licensing requirements around education did come into play, which has caused major problems here in terms of requiring people to go back to university. The one thing I would say about the title protection where I think we had to compromise was that in Australia in particular, the terms financial advisor and financial planner were used interchangeably, whereas what we were really pushing for was trying to say, look, obviously there needs to be a level of protection in terms of licensing for people who are providing financial advice services. And what I think, the ideal scenario is that you have those who are providing product advice being identified correctly, that they're providing financial advice services which relate to product advice, and that financial planning and holistic financial planning is what we talk about in terms of those who are certified. I mean, that's a separate, it's a differentiator. Yeah. And when you regulate both terms to be at the licensing level, you're not differentiating between, those who do holistic financial planning versus those that just do, who just give product advice. And I think that's where, if I was to go back in time, I'd say, and what I would say to other jurisdictions around the world is that you want to protect consumers by ensuring that the correct titles are used for those people, and it reflects what they actually do. But you want to leave room for the profession who regulates the certification or things higher than the licensing requirements, to be able to dictate what those requirements are, and for them to certify those individuals who meet those requirements. So the regulators do the minimum standard, and then the profession does those things over and above. Because then, to your point, what happened in Australia was that when you want to raise the minimum standards for licensing, everybody was captured, and they didn't. And one of the issues again, which I think other jurisdictions should learn from, is that they took the approach that effectively everybody was at the same level, and that was not the case. There were definitely those who had done way more than what was required to be licensed, and had committed themselves over and above in respect to their own personal development in terms of studies and exams, and signing up to a code of ethics that others didn't. And effectively that wasn't recognised, and that was the big disappointment here in Australia.
So I think you're right. There are definitely lessons to be learned for the UK and definitely other countries as well who are looking into this, potentially licensing or authorising the financial planner term. But let's move on now and talk about your new role at the FPSB, as you have been taken charge as the CEO of the FPSB since January 2023. Tell us a little bit about, themes or anything in particular that you intend to concentrate on, during your kind of first year at the helm of the FPSB.
Yeah, and look, I've started in that role. I am familiar with the Financial Planning Standards Board, the network of CFP, professionals and our affiliate territories. But what I am keen to do is to really spend this sort of period of beginning of my tenure to really listen and learn from the world, from our affiliates, from the CFP professionals about what's working, what's not working. But it's quite clear to me as well that there are areas of focus for us and for all of us, collectively, that we need to continue to progress. And one of the key themes that I hear everywhere I go, the awareness of the certification marks, consumer understanding of holistic financial planning, and the role that financial planners can play. That they remain a universal issue, if you like, that needs to continue to be addressed. And so there's definitely an area of focus for us, and we already have embarked on looking at this more directly with through a research project, a consumer research project, which is designed to provide us with some data and evidence to understand the position of what consumers are doing, what they understand, and awareness of the CFP marks, the role of financial planning, and how that can assist them. Do they use a financial planner? How are they? How are they looking after their financial affairs, in terms of, doing things on their own or employing a professional to help them. So very excited that this year we will have some data and research that will assist us globally. And I think that's very important. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as well a bit later, if you like, Jackie. And the other focus as well is that I hear as well from many CFP professionals and our affiliates is, the value proposition for being certified, the value proposition for maintaining your certification. And again, for everyone, you're a CFP, I'm a CFP, motivations for becoming a CFP professional, sometimes is quite personal and may be different. And in fact, it also might evolve. The reason why you obtain the certification may be very different for the reason why you maintain it. But in any case, having a global a global position on the certification value proposition is something that we're looking to release this year as well. And we're also looking to understand and support the role of firms and institutions and employers who, why would they want to invest in and employ a CFP professional to work in their business. And I think that's really important as well. So because employers are very big influencers in our profession, there are some really outstanding firms, financial planning firms who employ CFP professionals and, do really well. And so obviously it's great for their business, but there are others that don't. And so again, we need to be able to showcase the compelling argument and reasons as to why having a CFP professional in your business will help your business, will be better for your business. So, looking at those things, awareness, value proposition, data, and evidence to help promote the value of a CFP professional is very much, on the top of my list, and to listen and learn.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because I always say that, people say to me, what's the value of becoming a certified financial planner, Jackie? And I say, well, actually, it changes the way that you think. It changes the way that you give advice to your clients. It changes it gives you a better sense check of, potential problems that you're taking a client today, you're taking them in like a little time capsule and you're zooming them to the future, and you open the doors and you say to the client, do you like what you see? And they kind of go, no. And then you put them back in the time capsule, zoom them back to today, and you go, right, let's do something about it then. And, that ability to be able to think holistically and ask those extra questions, I think, it's really a valuable asset for people who go through the certification process. And certainly there hasn't been one person who hasn't agreed with that of all the people that I've trained in the last many years at the, in the UK. And without a doubt, that's what all, the certified financial planners in the UK say to me. That's the real value that they bring. But financial planning is one of those intangible things that, like with clients, financial advisors don't really understand, I think, the gravity and the importance of it until it's kind of been done to you, do they? So I'm sure it's one of those tricky, intangible things to explain, and I guess that's why the research that you're embarking on is going to be really important, so that you can get your client data about really the difference it's made to them.
Exactly, and again, we recognise the fact that we need to understand and be informed by the research and the data that will tell us, especially from a consumer perspective, what the attraction is or what the benefit has been to them. And equally, though, as you say, I mean, for each CFP professional, there are different reasons why the CFP certification mark is important to them. The designation means something to them. And for some, to be quite frank, Jackie, it could be as simple as that. Well, it's a requirement for me to have this job. Like, I need it as part of my role to your point, which is probably benefiting from, and people may not see this as a value add, but the benefit that the training has provided you, the benefit that going through the certification, program has developed your skills. And sometimes we don't, we don't recognize that or attribute that necessarily directly. But again, everybody's different. And so we need to be able to have a value proposition that can speak, to many different motivations around why someone may undertake the certification program, and then, of course, maintain it. I mean, retention and, the question that some people ask themselves from time to time is, is it, should I maintain and keep my CFP certification? And of course, we would, obviously advocate yes, but obviously, and you would expect us to. And that's why evidence and proof points can help that in terms of being impartial and having, some form of proof points to assist in the discussion.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit more about this global research survey that you're doing. As CFPs in the various countries, can can we get involved in that research with our clients?
Well, no, not directly. The research. So what we have done is we've partnered with the FPSB networks, so all the affiliates like CISI, for example, in the UK, to undertake a global research study of consumers, and we've employed a professional research provider to assist us with that, and they're going directly to consumers in each of the territories or countries that are participating. So we have 15 countries that are participating in the research. We're effectively looking to undertake, I think, 1,000 consumers in each of those countries. So there'll be over 15,000 consumers that will be surveyed globally.
Wow.
Those consumers were a mixture of consumers who have a financial planner or a CFP professional and those that don't. So the research provider, the research house that we're using is the one targeting and responsible for identifying the consumers. So we don't need the services of a CFP professional for the survey. We've been utilising, as I said, a professional research house to help us there. And what they will do, and what we've had to do as well, as you would appreciate, is that we've obviously had to ensure that the survey is appropriately translated, because we are in jurisdictions that English isn't the language, and we've had to ensure that consistency across not only the language, in just interpretation or direct translation, but ensuring we're using the correct lingo, if you like, and the concepts that are used, retirement versus pension, superannuation in Australia versus 401k in the US. So making sure we have the terminology that's appropriate for each jurisdiction. And then so that's the process, and we're in field as we speak, Jackie, in terms of those surveys being undertaken.
Fantastic.
In terms of what's been asked of consumers, it's a whole range of questions, but in a quick summary, we're asking consumers about we're trying to understand their financial investment habits. What do they do? Are they using the services of professional? What type of professionals are they using for those services? How's that if you are using a professional? Are they a CFP professional? Are they a financial planning professional? What are they? And what's your experience been like? And what has that individual brought to the table that you otherwise, wouldn't have had if you were doing it on your own? For those that are doing it on their own, why are they doing it on their own? Why have they chosen not to utilize a professional, so also understanding, where there are barriers in terms of seeking out the services of a CFP professional. Is it cost? Is it awareness? Is it something else? And so when we finish with this report, we'll have some pretty rich data to understand, consumer behavior. What are they doing and why are they doing it? And that will enable us to help better target. And so which then moves us to the second part of the project, which is distributing the report and the findings. And these reports will be localized. So we'll have, reports specifically for the UK, for example. We'll be able to benchmark the UK against Europe and against the rest of the world to be able to see, how, and again, this is just about consumer behavior. So, are consumers, consumers' awareness or experience with a CFP professional the same or different than those in South Africa or those in in China. So it'd be very, so again, we'll be able to understand locally as well as globally consumer behavior, and then that will inform us in particular at the Financial Planning Standards Board about how can we best utilize our assets for the purposes of either awareness or education and information, or other opportunities that might exist in terms of trying to fill the gaps that we find in the data.
Yeah, and it's really interesting stuff, actually. Only yesterday I saw an announcement that Vanguard have a retirement advice service that's very popular in the US, and they have certified financial planners. So it's kind of a combined robo-assisted a telephone advice system that they've got going over there. And they brought it over to the UK I think it was last year or so. And yesterday they announced that they're closing it down.
Well, and that's an interesting point in that, that's a classic, for me, a classic example of how not every jurisdiction or country or territory is the same. And it may be it's not the right time. It may be something else. And this is the beauty of financial planning, right? Not every client's the same.
Yep.
And so trying to, and this is no different to looking at the profession as a whole. And then also how we speak with and engage with the public and consumers and regulators is what one model that may work in one territory doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work in another. And this is why it's important that we understand. This is why I'm really excited by this research, because it will actually be able to show us specifically in one territory what's happening on the ground and how does that compare. And so therefore, it will give some intel to a specific country in terms of, okay, well, we're different because of these reasons. Like we can see here that consumers behave quite differently in our territory compared to others. And so we need to be able to adjust to that or can take that into consideration when we think about things like advertising or communication or promotion or whatever it may be. So even the way you might speak to consumers about financial matters, right? I mean, I know in some territories, the discussion of estate planning, and funerals and things like that is very sacred or taboo. And in other cultures, it may be, it's not a big deal. So, the more we understand, the more data we have to better understand consumers, the better opportunity we have to ensure we can provide appropriate services and advice to them.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited too now to find out what the results of all of that are going to be. But I'm sure that in due course, each of the affiliates around the world will be releasing parts of that data. So we'll, as CFPs on the ground, we'll get to find out a bit more about it. So tell me, finally, about where you see the CFP profession globally going in the next 10 years. If I could put you in your time capsule and zoom forward for 10 years and you open the door and had a little look out, what would you want it to look like?
It's a great question. And so, I hope this is not going to be one of those where in 10 years' time, Jackie, you play the tape and say, this is what you said, Dante.
Really? I've got that in my diary already.
But look, I'm really excited. I think the opportunity in terms of the growth of financial planning around the world is immense. I really do. And the reason why I say that is that, one, financial planning as a profession is young. It's a young profession when you compare us to law, medicine, accounting. We are in a little bit of, so within our own profession, within the financial planning community, we're a little bit, eager to fast track our professionalism and the profession's position, compared to the others, and trying to continually benchmark ourselves against, things like accountants and lawyers. But the reality is time, time is on our side, and there are many markets around the world that are still emerging in terms of their financial services market. And so the role of financial planning in those markets are going to become greater. The need for financial planners in those markets is only going to increase. So I'm very excited and optimistic by the fact that the need for financial planning, and in particular CFP professionals, is only going to grow. Now, what that looks like and what form it's going to be provided, whether we're going to be half AI, half personal or human, is another story. And I think for me, as much as technology is going to advance, that human touch and element in that process will play some role, because everybody's situation is different. And so from that perspective, that's what makes the role of an individual financial planner so unique. But so without knowing the technology side of things, and so what type of world we're going to live in, I'd love to be able to say that in 10 years' time we'll have over 500,000 CFP professionals around the world, and it would be in sort of 35 to 40 countries.
Yeah.
I think the opportunity, like I said, we're in 27 territories now. I think, what is it? Is it 200 nations in the UN or that are listed? So, I think there are so many more markets and territories that I think as I mentioned before, will mature and evolve in terms of their financial services market, that the need for financial planning will exist and will be there, and we want to be there and ready for that call. So I don't really know what the crystal ball will say, except in my view, I think the opportunity is great. I think the profession will be stronger and bigger than it is now, and we want to try and ensure that we can deliver on what's needed for consumers, and that we're there to support as many citizens around the world to be able to get access to advice. If I could just say this one point, Jackie, I used to say this, and I mean it, and it's something that I believe in. Second only to your health is your financial well-being.
Yeah.
And I believe that's almost like a human right. We talk, and I know we are still, around the world, and trying to ensure that everybody has access to, housing and clean water and food. And these are basic fundamentals, and that all assists towards people being healthy and happy. But as many countries around the world, evolve and grow, and we're able to get people out of poverty into, the middle class, that's where financial markets, access to financial services again becomes, everybody should have access to those things, and the role of financial planning and having access to a qualified, ethical professional like a CFP professional, in my view, is something that people should have access to. Whether they choose to use them or not, I think that's your choice. But some people don't have access, and that for me is a shame. And it'd be great to be able to sit here in 10 years' time and say that consumers have access, consumers have choice. And the preferred choice in our view, obviously, is a CFP professional.
Dante, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. Thanks very much for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jackie. It's been a delight. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. It's really interesting, isn't it, to listen to other people's points of view about different things, all relating to our wonderful financial planning profession. If you know anyone who might be interested in listening to any of these podcasts, please pass on our details to them. So that's it from me. Join me again next time when we'll be talking all things certified financial planner related, and also dropping in on our new entrants to the financial planning profession. Bye for now.